Twisted Metal 2012, Twisted Metal X, whichever you want to call it, this was supposed to be released to bring the franchise back from the depths of hell and make it a front-end game in the market. The last title this series received was Head On back in 2005. Of course, that was a PSP title that was then ported to the PS2 in 2008, but I'm talking about the real game here. We had a 7-year gap between each game, so when 2012 was announced, everyone was really excited. There was a great advertising campaign for it. Shoot My Truck was really engaging, one that sat with people in the Twisted Metal mindset of shooting vehicles, which you as a person could do with no cost. Just go onto their website at the time and you had the ability to let a real machine gun shoot the Sweet Tooth truck. Even better, this is the same truck that was brought on stage during E3. All around, people felt like this series was gonna come back. Fans rallied around for the release in 2012, which leads us to this video. I'm not going to talk about the whole development backstory nonsense to regurgitate the same information so many others have done unless I really need to. Plus, if I really wanted to regurgitate the same information, I could just make a retrospective series like everyone else. Instead, I'm just focusing on the game itself. I would say this game is a failure. The game did make a profit, of course, so sure, it wasn't a monetary failure. I'm instead using that as, you know, it's been 11 years for anything Twisted Metal to even release. The TV show was the first thing since this game. It's been that long since anything Twisted Metal has been released to the public. So I think it's safe to say that the whole reboot thing did not work out. So I never played this game back in the day. My first experience was actually on stream recently. I went into this with a completely open mind, ready to take it in and see what's good and what is bad. Going one step at a time, of course, and going into the single player as you normally would with this series. The traditional tournament format was changed into something different. We now have 3 character stories, and I use that very, very loosely, the word stories. Which is what I wanted to talk about first, because they are an important part of the game. Normally, I just skip over them since I've never been a fan of the Twisted Metal stories. They've never been done good ever. It's nearly impossible to portray a worthy story with this game's type of formatting. We had an attempt in Black, but even still, they all just blend together, so like, who actually cares? Twisted Metal is a gameplay-centric series, so that is the forefront. Your ability to keep adding on to your experience and replaying the game is the most important aspect. I'm going to leave a timestamp on screen if you want to skip past this part, because these quote-unquote stories did not make me happy at all. The timestamp will lead you to where the gameplay portion and everything else begins. Alright, so the stories. Just look, when I sat down to play this game, I've already seen these in the past, but sometimes you don't truly see how bad something is until you sit down and experience it for yourself. The game has you travel in a specific order of character. First Sweet Tooth, then Mr. Grimm, and then finally Dollface. As we know, this game has gangs rather than the traditional characters per car, but we will touch on that later. Before I say anything though, the green screening was quite good. All the backgrounds looked nice, the voice acting was really good, everything looked in place. Of course, there are a few green screen mistakes here and there, but you won't really notice it unless you actually look. 100% the best part of your experience here. Some references to the past TM games are thrown in as well, which is much appreciated. We start with Sweet Tooth, and they gave him some real build-up. There was actually an attempt to turn him into a character for once. Mr. Tooth has always been a one-dimensional character, just stabby stab man with a clown mask on. Of course, there wasn't much depth there, but I always appreciate the attempt of build-up. His story revolves around him trying to kill her, which is his wife, I'm pretty sure. Seeing how his eye got stabbed out, Tooth got very grumpy about that, and somehow kills what appears to be hundreds of people inside of a hospital while looking for his victim. The plot armor is unstoppable with him. He, of course, does not find her, which I'm like, alright, we get a little cat and mouse game. She gets away from him, he's trying to find her, so there's a little bit of substance there. Then we get to the ending. Needle Sugarcane goes up to Calypso and demands his prize because he is the winner. It gets granted and he gets sent to hell faster than Kane did to The Undertaker in WWE, essentially being stuck in a coffin because she offed herself. All around fine if this was 2001. We move on to Mr. Grimm, and I don't know if they just stopped trying here or what was going on in the studio, but this time Grimmy is more realistic compared to the other Grimms, nothing to do with reaping souls, just a normal guy with a dead dad. Poor guy, I guess. His dad gets bodied on the motorcycle. Grimmy is very scared about this and for some reason paints his face white and then talks about how much of a bad person he is, robbing people, killing people. Like, okay, I don't understand if this is supposed to be a poor attempt of me feeling for him. I don't really understand what this was even about or what was going on. There is no midpoint cutscene. Mr. Graham comes flying through the window, and this is a skyscraper, mind you, so his motorcycle somehow teleports or drives up the building like Spider-Man just to go through the window and attempt to make it look cooler than it actually is. It doesn't make any sense. And he asks for the almighty wish of saving his dad. How many times has this exact plotline been used in Twisted Metal? 3, 4, maybe 5 times? Someone wins the contest to go back in time and save someone's life. We've already seen it, guys. Your character seems to be very shocked when his dad and past self are scared to see a literal ogre in their back seat. There is a scuffle, the car crashes again, then the younger you shoots the older self. So essentially, it's a waste of time for the character to go through all of this since he dies anyways. Just like it was a waste of our time to watch this crap. Each transition into the next character is actually nice, like that car crash has something to do with the next story we watch. Smart touch to do that, honestly. Dollface comes up playing the narcissistic role, being the prettiest lady around, killing other models. It's alright, I guess. I mean, what else can you really say about it? The story is cringe, but your nipple can handle it. She gets ass blasted by the Grimm family battling it out in the front seat, gets this nasty scar on her face, and wants to get rid of it. How can she be attractive if she has an imperfection? The world cannot function. Krista then meets a secret man who lives in a door. She wants that mask. Our doctor gives her a big kiss to seal that mask on her so it makes her beautiful again. And uh-oh, he's gone now and she just got punked. We get a scene where I think she's having a mental breakdown, but I genuinely don't understand if this is some sort of mating call. She then whips out the old Elmer Fudd weapon and tries to shoot the mask off, and uh-oh, spaghetti-o, it does not work. After reaching the end, apparently Krista comes to this realization: if the mask comes off, she will be right back to where she was, dealing with these same quote-unquote bitches again. And she asks to be put on the world's biggest runway. Yep, actually runs in a straight line like a troglodyte and gets ran over by the plane. Then your grand story time is over. I shit myself. I didn't even know what to say about these things. The fact someone can release this piss poor stuff in the year 2012 is mind-boggling to me. In a AAA game, I might add. I've picked on the endings from other games in the past, but the argument I can use against myself is, that is from the 90s, early 2000s. Like, obviously you're not gonna get this amazing quality ending, you idiot. As time goes on and technology becomes more powerful, naturally your expectations get higher and somehow you have even less quality than Twisted Metal Black, and the story department, maybe aside from the Sweet Tooth cutscenes, is just impeccable. Like, how did you do it? It seems as if there was zero effort put into this in the writing department. I would genuinely not be shocked if this was written in a single day, like all 3 of these stories. Clearly the people doing the camera work and editing actually cared about what they were doing. Obviously whoever wrote this crap just did it for the paycheck. I didn't even mention this stupid thing they had thrown in with the preacher. For example, in the middle of Grimm's story, we got a cutscene of him staring at the building, yelling. He says, "Oh, I know who Calypso is." It's like, ah, yes, he is the Satan man from the underworld. Getting a few of these random scenes thrown in. Does it pay off? No, it doesn't. We just see him yelling inside of a cell at the end, which I think is in hell. Why is he there? I have no idea. Why was this not removed from the game? I have no idea, because it literally adds nothing. You could remove all of these scenes and nothing would change. Usually stories always have fluff in them, but these are not longer stories. Every cutscene we should be watching should actually have meaning. After the credits, we have Sweet Chick come out, which I think is Sweet Tooth's dead wife resurrected. I think Sweet Tooth's son becomes the new Sweet Tooth, and I'm just like, what the hell is going on here? Like, what is happening? Are we living in the Mortal Kombat universe where everyone's being resurrected? Is Ermac gonna come out and eat everybody and then become the ultimate Mr. Grimm EX? It makes no sense. I don't get why any of this is happening, and I don't think the people who wrote this did either for the 2 hours they worked on it. Some effort seemed to have gone into Sweet Tooth, and the rest have no reason to exist. It was actually a waste of my time to watch these. If you've never played this game and want to try it out, don't even bother paying attention to this crap. Maybe Sweet Tooth, but after that, just forget about it. Yes, I know. Oh, Sony forced them to do it late. They didn't want to do it. That's wonderful. Do you want to know why I don't care? Because I spent money on this. It was not free. I paid for this. You paid for this. When you're trying to look at a game seriously and rate it, you can't put that in. It was stuck on store shelves. Even with Twisted Metal 3 and 4, it does suck. I understand the hell those people went through too. But the funny thing is that I never see anyone coming out to damage control those games, which those ones actually had an even worse development cycle than this one did. Players have every right to not like a game that they paid money for, regardless of how the development was, because it was the publisher who stuck it out for us to buy it. Same goes with a lot of games in modern times. People trash them relentlessly for how bad they are, stuff that's wrong with them, this is broken, that is broken. People have every single right in the world to do so because they spent money on it. Being a AAA game developer is really rough, it's strenuous as hell. The message this game gives out to publishers is don't sell us a half-ass product and it won't get shit on. Allow people to spend their time on it and finish everything properly so we don't have garbage like this in our games. These stories have no base, no substance, no nothing. Some of them don't even make any sense. They are actually worthless, and I've read children's books that would eat these for breakfast. This was not the early 2000s anymore. This was 2012. There were so many games that released already that had grandiose experiences, amazing storytelling, whatever else you want to throw in. This feels like it was released in 2006. If you showed this to someone who never played it, I am more than sure they would say the same exact thing. At this point in time, it's reasonable to expect something to actually be more fluid, more in depth. It just got messed up real bad, and it's genuinely one of the worst story experiences I have ever seen on that generation of console. I really just wish they weren't added at all, so the development team could have focused more on the gameplay and multiplayer aspect and just don't even bother with this crap. And it's a shame that these publishing companies still do this shit to this very day, and it irritates me. Because this is what happens. This is the kind of stuff we get. We get garbage like this when they don't allow people to actually finish their work. Just worthless, stinky, smelly garbage like this.
Hello, mortal. This is your pal Dollar Store Grim here. I need to make sure you subscribe to this channel and leave a like on the video. Make sure to click the bell icon too. If you don't follow my instructions, then there is no escaping my wrath. Let the world beware.
After that catastrophe, we can finally talk about the rest of this game, which I wanted to start with the core gameplay itself. It being changed once again from what we know, simplifying things a little bit when it comes to the command attacks. Previously we had the up right as shield, left right up as freeze, or up down up depending on which entry you played beforehand, all the typical stuff. But now all of that stuff has changed to a single D-pad input, up is freeze, down is rear attack, etc. This does help people so they don't need to worry about having issues, which happens in games like Twisted Metal 2 where your inputs don't want to come out, or you accidentally use an energy attack when you didn't mean to, messing yourself up. Of course, this threw a lot of people off, including myself. Since I always use the D-pad to turn in these games, I'm required to use the analog sticks, which takes some time getting used to. Especially when you change the controls people used for over a decade, it's like when some fighting games change the input of a move that's been around for 20 years. It can be really annoying, but no real frustration to actually handle. Another thing that takes some adaptation is the overall speed. It was a jump from the PS1 games to go to black, then going from black to this, it feels like you're playing in 2 times speed. If you love the faster paced gameplay, then this will surely stick out to you. If not, then be warned, handling the game will be really difficult for a while. After getting a hold of these controls, there is a really good game at its core here. Everything does feel really fluid, running at 30 FPS. Sadly, it's not solid. I had plenty of moments where my PS3 was struggling to not die because of how much was going on. So many particle effects from Outlaw Special, for example, surely did give the console aids, but it held in. I never had any crashing issues, just the slight frame rate drops. This, of course, is a bummer, considering black and even the head-on port on PS2, mind you, were running at a smooth 60 frames a second. Especially black releasing a decade earlier, that is kind of sad. Most of the time, my experience was really good. I was pleasantly surprised with how well the gameplay feels. New weapons were added into the game, which is really fun. The shotgun is probably my favorite. Having unique ways to use it and getting extra damage was really nice. Shooting someone's windshield with it makes it more powerful rather than using it on the behind or sides. The sniper is a new weapon that can actually one-shot anybody. For the player, it takes 10 years to charge up that long, but on Twisted difficulty, your enemies seem to charge it in like 5 seconds, which can be really annoying because you get insta-killed every time. I'm glad to see some new, unique weapons being added that are something different from a missile, which of course you have plenty of. Stalker, homing, fire, power missiles, all the typical stuff, which has nice visual effects and satisfying sounds, making them feel really impactful as you'd expect. Plus, adding the ability to change out your machine gun is really cool. A magnum, rockets, Uzi, sawed-off shotgun, and a laser pistol, all having different attributes, allowing the player to change it up a bit. Of course, the regular machine gun is still the best to me. It's nice to have the option. So everything about the core gameplay is really awesome so far, but there is a disgusting, foul, rancid, gross smell. The characters. We have 17 to choose from, which sounds alright. You know, it's similar to the other games. I personally expected more because it's a late generation PS3 game, but whatever. But the issue that sticks out like an STD is the clones. I started to know this as I unlocked more characters and tested everyone out. With a 17 character roster and having clones is unacceptable. Look at Twisted Metal 4, it had the same issue with clones, but there was 30 different special weapons, and at least those ones were visually changed for the most part. In 2012, some cars have special weapons that are literally identical. Of course you'll have the people saying,
"Are you stupid? The cars have different stats. If you do this with the car, you will get more damage. You're just a hater."
Who is going to notice that unless they sit there and play the game for hours on end? When you look at Roadkill and Death Warrant side by side, their specials are identical. It doesn't matter how different their damage is. This becomes visual redundancy, making you feel like each of these characters play exactly the same, even if there are some statistical differences. There is no need to defend this lack of creativity and laziness because it's just the truth. It's boring to have this in a game. No one likes clones in anything. Hack and slash games, fighting games, you name it. It removes the uniqueness a character can have within said game. The only unique characters in this game are Outlaw, Mr. Grimm, Talon, Junkyard Dog, Vermin, Roadboat, Shadow, and Meatwagon, only leaving 8 characters that do not share at least a visual special weapon with another character, making less than half the roster actually feel special. Even still, we get some real leakage when you have moments with some characters like Outlaw being my example here, where he has 2 specials but they do the exact same thing. Like what? One is just better than the other. Like what knuckleheads designed it this way? Why would you do that? Outlaw's alt special is just better than his normal special, but they do the exact same thing. Thankfully, this does not happen too often, only with Outlaw, Roadkill, and Death Warrant. The issue with this, as I said earlier, is that most of the characters feel the same. Like remember playing Twisted Metal Black, for example, and each character actually felt unique, specials were different, giving you a reason to want to play as everyone? It was like this in every game up to this point. Twisted Metal 3 didn't even do this, the one where the drone normie is considered to be the worst game in the series. It removes the specialty from characters even more so considering the fact there aren't even drivers for them. The drivers inside the car give it a little bit more personality and might actually get someone to be interested into a specific character. Personally, I don't care about it unless I can make memes out of them, but some people do, and since this game removed that, it makes the cars feel like soulless pieces of poop and honestly made me forget a lot of them from this game. With the older characters, there's usually something grasping that I remembered. Pizza Boy because he's a meme, Thumper because of the Flame special, Darkside's Mr. Ash because of his ending from the first game, Twisted Metal 4 Sweet Tooth because of Henchman, Cousin Eddie because he's a mentally stunted stump, and this exact same thought can be used about so many other characters within the franchise. When I shut off 2012 for the first time, I genuinely forgot most of the characters in the game aside from the generic ones, Mr. Grimm, Sweet Tooth, Axel, etc. The new cars all just blended together because they're clones and lack of personality, so it becomes a mixed bag for over 50% of the roster just blending together and becoming overly forgettable since they don't deviate from each other. I mentioned in the story section of the video, but if you skipped over it, yes, I know this game had the debacle with the story mode being added in last minute, which I don't care about. This was the game that I purchased. This is the game we all purchased. I'm not going to sit here and make excuses to defend it. Because this clone shit right here is inexcusable for a game, especially in 2012. This was not 2001. Hell, Black was the one that released in 2001 and didn't even do this shit, but whatever. Don't release a game if it's not finished. When a company sticks something on a shelf and expects someone to pay $60 for a game or however much it was when you put the money down on it, don't give me half-assed characters in a garbage shit-stained story mode. Twisted Metal 3 and 4 had the same issue. Even though I think 4 turned out good for what it was, people don't like 3 and 4 for a reason. They have quite a bit of issues and it's understandable why people don't like them. Those games' development cycles were not good. I've talked to the lead programmer myself. It was a bad development cycle. If those games had more time, they probably would have been much better, just like 2012 in the character department and stories as well. I will toss you a bone and say I can understand if you tell me the story part is not their fault, because in reality it's not the developer's fault, it's Sony's fault. What I can't excuse is the car clones. It baffles me why this choice was made, because even if this game was released online only, it would still be boring to play because half the roster are copies of each other. I don't see this having longevity at all because of the lack in variety. At least with Black being played online, there are multiple characters to use who have different specials, different tactics, and actual reasons to play as everyone, unlike with 2012. I just genuinely would not see this being popular for that long. Like, you'd sit there and you play it, you'd be like, oh, this is really fun, and then you'd be like, this is kind of getting boring because half the characters feel exactly the same, and it would just kind of be like, okay, I don't really care to play this anymore, and it just sucks. The gameplay for this is so good, and it's really a shame. If you can look past all of this, the overly redundant cars, weak story mode, everything I've mentioned, and you still want to continue on, the final thing to me that I will say that really sucks about 2012 is that it has no replay value whatsoever. I've been guilty of saying Twisted Metal games have no replay value, because in reality they don't compared to a lot of other things. The one thing I can say is that all the other entries kept some people entertained enough to finish the game with every character. Obviously, it's not a crazy amount of time, but you do have a small goal to overcome. With the removal of separate stories to experience, we are left with replaying the same 3 to 4 game types on repeat. No one wants to play the races because they feel very mediocre and just not very enjoyable. Granted, these are not as bad as people put them out to be. Before trying the races, people were telling me, oh, they're impossible, they're so difficult. But I finished all 3 of them on my second try after I knew what I was getting into. There are some new boss fights, which again, I appreciate the attempt of innovation here, but they're just simply not fun. Anyone who has played this, you could just mention Iron Maiden to them and just end it there. It's a one and done experience, no reason for anyone to ever play them again. All the other game types are fun in their own right. We have this moving King of the Hill mode where you need to stay inside of a designated zone until it decides to move, traditional deathmatch, and Juggernaut, which in my opinion is the most fun way to play this game aside from what I call mini Twisted Metal. The Jug mode is where you have that said truck driving around and you need to kill it before it spawns other vehicles in, otherwise an endless amount will come. Mini Twisted Metal, as I've dubbed it, is in the challenge mode. Just pick any extra small map, 10 opponents. It's very chaotic and lots of fun to play for a short time. But that's the thing, a short time. You can only drive around shooting bots in an arena for so long before it wears down on you and the experience becomes very boring. There's not even a trivial goal in mind, you just shoot things, and it's like, alright, with the other games you have the ability to sit there and be like, alright, I need to beat the game with this amount of characters, I have Shadow, Axel left, and then I'm done. I beat the whole game with everybody. But in this, it's like you're sitting there and you're just driving around and just shooting things. It's like, okay, you know, after the 5th, 6th time, it's like, okay, is there anything else for me to do? Aside from one unlock, the one that is sought after by most people who play 2012, the biggest challenge it has, finishing every story mission with a gold medal on Twisted difficulty. This is a challenge. This is not easy whatsoever. It takes a lot of practice, so much time learning things, the controls, specific ways you need to play, learning spawns on the map, because a few of these levels are really, really hard. Especially the dual jug ones. Of course, Iron Maiden and Carnival of Carnage are really tough as well. Finishing them under a certain time limit is a ball buster for sure, and one thing that keeps people stuck with this game. It was something I genuinely had interest in. Nothing else was really keeping me around. The core gameplay is a lot of fun, so why not give it a go? Well, there's a perfect reason for that. The quote-unquote reward is a fucking joke. Going through all of that, you unlock Warthog. To some, it may sound cool for some reason. To me, I was like, what the frick, why? Then you find out he's a fucking clone of Axel. And like, I was just done. I just sat there and I just laughed and I was done. You go through all that, you learn all the maps, do the toughest thing possible in the game, and the ending might as well just piss into my eyeballs and give me pink eye. You cannot be serious with this. But they are. Thanks to Drew for sending me this footage, by the way, of Warthog, because I'd be damned if I'd ever bother wasting my time with this. Why couldn't we get something cool? Like, just imagine this, like a crazy single-player only character. Like, imagine getting Darktooth or Minion, a classic monster of an enemy. Just why? Why do you give us this trash? And the funniest part is that he's not even that good. Like, seriously, it's like, what the fuck is going on here? Once I figured out the reward, I just lost all interest. Like, sure, if you want to be a completionist, then by all means, go for this. But you won't be happy in the end because, like, the unlock's not even worth it. Good example, we have all these gold skins for finishing the game one time, right? Why could these not be character-specific unlocks? Get a certain amount of kills with someone's special weapon, making a creative challenge based on what their car is made for. Darkseid is good at ramming, right? Make it so you need to get a specific amount of ramming kills to get the golden Darkseid skin. They look genuinely cool and it would be an awesome thing to unlock. It's not a lot, but it's something. Warthog is the only thing you have to unlock aside from the gold skins for finishing the story mode. I don't count those since everyone's first choice is always that mode. People go through hell to unlock him. The reward is actually a kick in the tit. You also unlock the laser pistol machine gun replacement for finishing the game on Twisted difficulty, which again is not really worth the trouble. If there were gold skins to unlock or a really new character specific skin to get, it would make this game a lot more interesting and make people want to mindlessly grind it because there's something to actively work towards. There's just nothing to do in 2012, which is the biggest problem, especially playing it in modern times. It has no online servers. If you do want to try to play it with others, stuff like X-Link Kai exists for you to emulate a LAN experience and try it out. Most players don't have the ability to do that or would rather not jump through all those hoops just to play online, but the option is there. Honestly, I don't see how much longevity it would have considering most of the characters are clones of each other, as I said earlier. Even back in the day, from everyone that I asked, they said the servers were not good, constant disconnects, latency issues, the game didn't even have a host migration. So if the host rage quit, then your match would just end. Which even at this time, it was archaic, like Call of Duty World at War level shit from 2008. Again, this is unacceptable for the time this game launched in. There was so much advancement in the gaming world from the time frame of Head On to 2012. That year, so many great games released. Borderlands 2, Black Ops 2, Mass Effect 3, Halo 4, Dishonored, Forza Horizon, Max Payne 3, just to name a few. Regardless of your opinions towards any of these games, it's undeniable all of them had more content, all of them had more replay value, and all of them were worth the money more than Twisted Metal 2012 was. And yes, I know Halo 4 was not on the PlayStation, I'm just using it as an example. Development constraints hurting the single player mode a lot is a shame, but again, it was released. You can't just keep making excuses for something because you're a fan, and you need to face reality for once. To me, this should have been a launch title on the PlayStation 4. It probably would have been supported more, people would still have access to it. The launch of the PS4 would have been much more exciting with a whole new Twisted Metal reboot. But here we are, 11 years after it released, and it makes sense to me playing now why it was forgotten to time. Sure, it made profit for the company if you want to look at sales figures. 2012 was not a commercial failure, but as a reboot, it was. The initial sales came out, people pooped their pants, 1 month later, the game was dead, and people moved on to other things. The analogy I use to describe 2012 fits perfectly, I feel. A wonderfully made cake that looks delicious, gameplay feel being that said cake. But the frosting, meaning diversity, memorable map design, replay value, all shit. The frosting is actually fecal matter and why this game to me is a failure. I have no want to ever play this game again. I just use it for footage and then shut it off and never touch it because there's actually no reason to. I would love to hear everyone else's thoughts about this game in the comments. I didn't touch on every single thing this game did, like adding customizable paint jobs for cars, since personally I don't feel like it's important enough to mention here. It really does sadden me how smelly this reboot is. I genuinely loved the core feeling, the best in the entire series if you just look at the gameplay alone. It's just everything else around it is just so lackluster and so forgettable and so boring. It really sucks. Hopefully a new Twisted Metal game releases soon that actually has character diversity and actually has content.
What is going on, little man? It's Axel here, coming in to thank all of the channel members. If you want to be a cool guy like the rest of these fine people, go ahead and join the channel and spam stupid emotes in chat. Thanks for watching, babies.